Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Spotify.
Now streaming on Peacock.
By all that's holy, Bridget Jones.
Hello, old friend.
Bridget Jones is back
We are about to embark on an adventure.
for one final chapter.
Anything else I can help with?
Yes.
Experience every moment
Do you think about what might have been?
and fall in love
To Bridget.
all over again.
It's time to live.
Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy. Streaming now only on Peacock.
All episodes of A Trial by Podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only. Much to their parents' dismay, neither host is a lawyer, journalist, or investigator. Just two people with microphones and Wi-Fi. All actions discussed are alleged, and all parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. For the full legal mumbo-jumbo, check the show notes.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kelsey, and today I am going to tell you the story of 23-year-old Stacey Colbert, who was in the prime of her life when she was murdered in her apartment in Columbus, Ohio in 1998. And then, at the end of the story, I am going to ask you guys for help in haunting the person who did this to her and the people who know who did it. All right, everybody, welcome to the pod. If you have been here before, you know that I usually have Emily here with me. She's not here today. I'm doing a little solo epi, which is weird. I'm in a basement just talking to myself right now. But Emily, last weekend, we were out with friends and Emily fell getting out of the Uber. She's going to be mad at me for telling this story. But it was icy, okay? It's cold here in Cleveland. She fell getting out of the Uber, slipped on some ice, and she has very badly sprained her ankles. So she cannot easily get around. She can't really drive. So if you guys send your thoughts and prayers, she's going to be all right. But send Emily some good vibes. We need that ankle to heal up so she's able to just live life normally again. But yeah, it's been about a week of she's been in a decent amount of pain, hasn't been able to do much. So we're going to record without her today. We will miss her greatly because she brings the vibes. And I don't have good vibes for you today. My story for you today is very, very sad, very bad vibes. But yeah, I guess with that being said, I'm trying to think, do I have any other biz nasty? I guess give us a 5-star rating wherever you're listening. If you love the pod, that helps us out so, so much. And I can see how many people listen and how many ratings we have. So if you guys are able to throw one in, if you haven't yet, that would be awesome. And, you know, I don't know this for sure, but allegedly I feel like it'll heal Emily's ankle. Like, good as new. We just need like 500 more ratings and then the ankle will work perfectly again. But I don't know. That's allegedly. Okay, last thing I'm going to say before I actually get into the story for you guys is I also bit my tongue really hard the other day. I know this sounds dumb, but I bit my tongue so hard and I think I'm speaking funny. Like, I think I sound funny. Everybody else tells me they don't notice what I'm talking about, but I just wanted to put that out there in case you guys were like, why does she sound crazy? I feel like it's because like my tongue is swollen in my mouth. So I don't know. That might be TMI for you guys, but here we go. So like I said at the top of the story, today I am going to tell you about the murder of Stacey Colbert. And this story actually came to me because Stacey's friends from college and her sister have started an online campaign called Finishing Stacey's Fight. And they reached out to me. I don't remember if it was on TikTok or Instagram originally, But they reached out. Like I said, this happened in 1998, so it's been a very long time. And while it's technically unsolved, I guess let's put it that way. And they are still fighting for justice, and they're really trying to bring media attention to this case because you'll see by the end, I think this is a completely solvable case. And really what they need is for someone who knows something to come forward. And it's one of those cases where it seems pretty obvious that there are people who know things. So with that being said, here we go. So on March 24th, 1998, Danielle Nussbaum received a voicemail from one of her sister's co-workers who had called to ask Danielle if her sister, who was 23-year-old Stacey Colbert, was doing okay, as she hadn't shown up to work in 2 days. So this is on a Tuesday. They're like, she wasn't here yesterday on Monday. She wasn't here today. And Danielle is obviously immediately concerned. We hear this a lot when it's, people aren't showing up to work. It's like they're hard workers. They would never do that. And that is exactly the case here. Stacey loved her job. She had recently graduated from Ohio State University and she started working in marketing. And she was known for being a hard worker, a self-starter. So everyone was extremely concerned by not only her absence, but the fact that she didn't tell them she would not be coming in. It was unannounced, no call, no show. And that's just something she would never do. So upon receiving this message, Danielle immediately got into the car and headed to Stacey's apartment, which was just about 2 miles away from her own. When she arrived, the sinking pit in her stomach only sunk deeper. She saw Stacey's car in the parking lot, but when she got to her apartment door, she found the door slightly ajar. In Stacey's kitchen, she found a box of breadsticks from a local pizza joint and milk sitting out on the counter, as if someone was just in the middle of a meal. Even more haunting, the door to the fridge was open. So that tells you she didn't just go somewhere. No one's going to leave milk on the counter and the fridge open and say, you know what, I got to run an errand. I'll just be back. So Danielle immediately calls 911 to report her sister missing. And sadly, it would be almost 7 years before they ever found her. So Stacey and Danielle grew up in Charleston, Illinois. Danielle was 2.5 years older, and she was more into choir and theater and the arts, those types of things. While Stacey was more sporty. She played tennis. She would go running every morning. In college, she would run every morning at 4 a.m., which is hell yeah, girl. Hell yeah, because you ain't never going to see me running at 4 a.m., I'll tell you that. But despite all of their differences, they were into different things, but the two were thick as thieves. They were best friends. They were that pair of sisters who just loved each other. And in 1991, Danielle enrolled at OSU, where her father and her uncle had both graduated from. So it kind of became this family tradition. And just 2 years later, when Stacey graduated high school, she joined Danielle down in Columbus, Ohio. So for those of you who don't know, Emily and I are from Cleveland, so we're about 2.5 hours north of Columbus. But, a lot of people we know and grew up with all went to OSU. So I think that's why Stacey's story is a little bit near and dear to our hearts, because Columbus is known for being a pretty safe area, especially around the OSU campus. I mean, Columbus is a nice city, and it's just one of those things that it feels very unbelievable that something like this happened there. So the girls lived, like I said, just a few miles from one another, and they would get coffee together all the time. And that's kind of where they would catch up, is at the coffee shop. And I'm sure this made the transition to college life just a little bit less intimidating for Stacey, because she had her sister there. She had someone who's been through it. She had someone, who knew a group of people and all of these things. So it's just a little bit of a softer transition for her. But I almost don't even think that Stacey needed that. She was just sociable. She was a go-getter, and I think she could have done fine on her own too. It's just nice that it made it a little bit easier. And Stacey seemed to really just flourish after she moved to Columbus. She ended up joining the Alpha Delta Pi sorority, where she met two of her best friends, Ashley Knott and Paula Shoup. The three girls lived together in the sorority house for 2 years, thriving and enjoying college life. But Stacey didn't let all the fun distract her from her studies. She was a marketing major, and she was pretty much crushing it at school from the beginning. In 1996, she actually landed an internship with McDonald's, working on their marketing projects for the 1996 Olympics. And while it was for McDonald's, I think it was more specifically for the Ronald McDonald House, which is like a charitable organization. And so that was a big deal for her. And I mean, that looks good on your resume. I know everybody's like, oh, McDonald's is bad for you, but they're a huge company, obviously. They're worldwide. So to land a marketing internship there in college is very, very impressive. After Stacey graduated in 1997, she got a job working for American Electric Power, and she also moved into her own apartment because she had always lived with roommates before, and so this was the first place that she had all to herself. So she really was transitioning into adulthood and just doing a great job at it. She was building a good life for herself, and she was enjoying the process. It wasn't something that she was like, oh, I wish I could go back in time. But sadly, all of this, everything she had worked for, everything she was building, all came crashing down on March 22nd, 1998. One day later, on the 23rd, Danielle had tried to call Stacey about the 70th Academy Awards, which had aired on TV that day. But Stacey didn't answer. And Danielle says that she had actually left almost, she thinks, 18 voicemails for her just because they had recently gone and seen the Titanic together. The Titanic had just come out that year. And so every time she saw someone was up for an award, like, Leo or someone from the Titanic, she was calling Stacey. And Stacey's not answering, so she's leaving message after message. And this didn't really concern her at the time because she remembered Stacey had mentioned something about going out of town for work. And so she kind of just figured, she must have already left for her work trip because she didn't know exactly when that trip was supposed to be. So again, kind of weird, but nothing that was concerning to her. That is, of course, until her coworkers called Danielle a few days later to say that she hadn't been at work. Now, according to Danielle, investigators took Stacey's disappearance very seriously from the get-go. On top of the apartment door being opened and the food on the counter, Stacey's car, purse, money, and credit cards were all at the apartment, which also shows you that this was no robbery. There was nothing missing. On the inside of her front door was a male shoe print, as if someone had kicked the door closed from the inside. Also near the front door, handprints were found on the floor, which, odd. Why would there be handprints on the floor? What is somebody doing on the floor like that? It's not their apartment. They weren't Stacey's handprints. Why? Unless you're on your hands and knees cleaning that floor. That makes no sense to me. But sadly, to my knowledge at least, these prints have never been matched to anyone, so we don't know whose handprints they really are. Now, it was obvious that wherever Stacey was, it was most likely against her will. So I did read in one source that they automatically treated the case as a homicide because the apartment apparently reeked of bleach and it looked like it had been thoroughly cleaned. But I only saw that in one place, so I want you guys to take that with a grain of salt. I am not certain. I don't know how true that is, but I wanted to mention it. From an interview that Danielle did with the Murder in My Family podcast, she said that it looked like the scene was undisturbed. So to me, that's conflicting with this idea that it looked like it had been thoroughly cleaned and it smelled like bleach. That seems like two conflicting stories. And I have a feeling that what Danielle said is probably the truth. But I wanted to mention the bleach thing just because, you can see how that would be alarming if someone is missing and their house reeks of bleach. Now, Danielle told Dateline last year, quote, "They went through her apartment. They asked me all sorts of questions. And then, like a couple of hours later, Teams from rape and homicide came. Even though I know it takes 24 hours for them to take action, I feel like they took action on the initial reporting, end quote. So that's great to hear. A lot of the times for adult missing persons cases, they're like, well, how long have they been gone? But here, I think just the circumstances of everything, the way the kitchen was found and all of that, it was very evident that something was really, really wrong here. So, like I said, on Stacey's kitchen counter, they found that box of breadsticks from the local pizza place, and taped to the box was a receipt that was dated March 21st, 1998, 5:58 p.m. So this would have been that Saturday evening, the day before the Academy Awards. Detectives contacted the pizza place that it was from, and they spoke to the boy who delivered Stacey's order. Now, I say boy because he was just a teenager. He's just a kid. And he told police that he didn't notice anything unusual when he was delivering Stacey's order. He explained that even though everything seemed normal and he only saw Stacey and no one else, he did get a sense that she was not alone when he delivered the pizza. He thought someone else was in the apartment with her. However, he says he did not hear or see anyone else. Okay, because Stacey came to the door, she answers the door, she gets the pizzas. He didn't hear or see anyone else, but his gut instinct when he was asked if she was alone was that no, I don't think she was alone, but he can't really explain why. And of course, he didn't really see evidence that someone else was there. So, we can't know for sure whether or not she was alone, unfortunately. Now, on top of the pizza delivery kid, detectives also spoke with Stacey's friends, coworkers, ex-boyfriends, ex-roommates, and her neighbors. And really, they didn't come up with much except for the neighbors. And what the neighbors who lived directly above Stacey had to say was haunting. They told detectives that around 4 a.m. on March 22nd, they heard screaming coming from below them. They explained they, quote, couldn't go back to sleep, end quote, because it sounded like, quote, someone was in trouble, end quote. Yet, they did not call the police. After hearing screams at 4 a.m. that sounded like someone was in trouble, they did not call the police. They also did not go to check on Stacey for at least 10 hours. They said that they went to check on Stacey around 2 p.m. the next afternoon, 10 hours after hearing this screaming. And when they go to her door, they knocked on the door, but they got no answer. And that same day, they found Stacey's cat, who was named Boots, which I just thought was cute. He was just roaming the halls of the apartment building. He had gotten out of the apartment. And what's interesting about this neighbor's story is they say they go and knock on Stacey's door. She doesn't answer.
Still getting around to that fix on your car? You got this. On eBay, you'll find millions of parts guaranteed to fit. Doesn't matter if it's a major engine repair or your first time swapping your windshield wipers. eBay has that part you need, ready to click perfectly into place for changes big and small. Loud or quiet, find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. But you already know that. eBay. Things, people, love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
Clorox Sentiva smells like grapefruit. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
Okay, we could be here all day. Try Clorox Sentiva for a trusted clean with long-lasting freshness. Also available in lavender and coconut. Use as directed.
But they don't know anything about the door being ajar. And that's odd to me because when Danielle gets there, she says the door's ajar. Now, this person doesn't explicitly say that the door was closed, but I'm really, really interested to hear. I would love to ask this person, was the door all the way closed when you knocked, or was it slightly open? Because if it was all the way closed, that almost indicates that someone else opened the door after 2 p.m. that Sunday. So just interesting, something to think about. Now, even when they knock on the door the next day in the afternoon and Stacey doesn't answer, they still don't call the police. They still don't report anything. And really the only reason that they were speaking to police at this point was because the police came to them, not the other way around. And while my gut instinct is to be very critical of this person, like, what the fuck? Why wouldn't you call the police? I also think we always need to give people grace in these situations, because I know that this person has since passed away, but I am sure that they thought about this and regretted it every single day of their lives since it happened. And I think that is punishment enough. And we don't need to punish them more by just obliterating them on a podcast. But I also think it is important to note that they didn't do the right thing there. The right thing would have been to call. And I just say that so we can all learn from it, not to say that this person was a bad person or any of that. But I definitely think it's something that we need to talk about, and we need to say, if we are ever in that position, we have learned from this person and we will call police. Everybody listening to this. Now, with this information from the neighbors, and by the way, I should add that what I read was the reason that they didn't call police was because they had a bunch of outstanding parking tickets and they didn't want to draw attention to themselves. Just a side note, because I know people are going to ask. But with this information from the neighbors, detectives were more certain than ever that Stacey had at the very least been kidnapped, but no one seemed to have any idea who would have wanted to hurt her. Everyone who knew her said she was a kind, bright, intelligent young woman. So I don't know what detectives were thinking in that moment, but when I hear that no one knew who wanted to hurt her, that immediately just makes me think it's a pretty high chance that this is a man who did this to her, because, you know, she denied him, or he's jealous, or he's an abusive partner, or a sexual predator, whatever it may be. I feel like, and this might be the wrong assumption, but whenever I hear a story like this and it's like, well, she was just, or they were just a great person, whoever it may be, boy or girl, I don't know who would want to do this to them. I usually assume it is some type of romantic or sexual jealousy of some sort, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Now, investigators instructed Danielle not to speak to the media when Stacey first went missing. They told her, don't put out flyers, don't talk to news stations, nothing. And they wanted her to keep pretty quiet about what was going on for at least 1 week. Now, they told her, you know, tell your friends, tell your family, ask around, you know, if anyone's seen her, that kind of stuff. But they were just trying to keep it close to the chest so they could control the situation. Danielle doesn't really remember the details on why they wanted her to keep quiet, but really all she remembers is that they thought it would give them the upper hand on the person who did this, and she felt like their reasoning made sense. It wasn't something that she questioned at all. And from what I've heard of Danielle talking to different media outlets, it seems like she was pretty happy with how police handled her sister's case. So Danielle listened to them. Of course she did. She was trusting them, and she did what they asked. But she wasn't just going to sit around and do nothing in the meantime. So she couldn't talk to news stations, but she wanted to take action. So she took Stacey's address book and started calling every single person she could find in it. Because back in the day, you didn't have cell phones with a list of contacts. People were just writing down their contacts on paper, names, phone numbers, addresses. I know you youngins are like, oh my God, that's insane. And yeah, it is. I concur. So she's taking this address book and she just starts calling every single person. Whether or not she actually knew this person, she was just calling and she's like, who are you? How do you know my sister? When did you last see her? When did you last speak to her? Do you know anything, was anything weird going on? Anything like that. Just trying to gain as much information as she possibly could. And every single person that she spoke to, whether or not they knew Danielle beforehand, they were extremely helpful and wanted to give as much information as possible and offer any help that they could provide. And when I say every single one, I guess I should say every single person except for one person. Because one person, who was a man who had recently helped Stacey move into this new apartment she was living in Governor Square, this man was not very helpful. Anytime Danielle would try and call this guy, he refused to take her call. Either no one answered the phone at all, or someone like one of his roommates or someone who lived with him would answer the phone and they would tell Danielle like, oh, he's not here, or make some sort of excuse of why he couldn't speak with her. Then, after a couple of days of this, someone answered the phone, but after hearing it was Danielle calling again, the phone was passed to a different person who lived there. And this other person asked Danielle something along the lines of like, why are you harassing my roommate type of thing? Why do you keep calling here? What do you want? And Danielle was taken aback. This set off major alarm bells for her because before that call, she didn't suspect anything about this person. She was just calling everyone to find out what she could. So why was this guy assuming that Danielle was calling to harass him about something? And Danielle actually told the podcast that's called The Murder in My Family. It's a great podcast. I highly recommend it. She told The Murder in My Family, quote, I was taken aback, like they were friends. That's a weird thing. And nothing had been released. End quote. So what she's saying is this still was not on the news. It wasn't in the media. The press did not know that Stacey was missing. So why is this guy acting like he's being accused of something when he doesn't even know that there's something to be accused of? Very interesting. Okay. So according to Danielle, Stacey was not romantically involved with this guy at any point, and she knew for sure that Stacey was not interested in him in anything romantic. She just wanted to be friends, and as far as she had heard, they both felt the same way. It was just a platonic friendship, no big deal. But of course, in hindsight, we all have to question, did he feel that same way, or was he looking for something more? So Danielle tells police about this odd interaction, but it's also one of those things where this is an odd situation in general. So how weird is it really? We don't know, but it's one of those things where you get a gut feeling in your stomach telling you something is wrong. But at this point, the police don't really have any solid leads to go on. But Stacey was loved, and the Ohio State community, alongside her coworkers from American Electric Power, rallied behind Stacey's family. And OSU held a vigil for her, and over 5,000 students showed up. American Electric Power printed thousands and thousands of flyers for the search efforts, and Stacey's friends, family, and coworkers would spend their days and nights spreading them across the city. The company also held Stacey's job position open for months and months, so it would be there for her when she hopefully returned. But sadly, she never did. Almost from the beginning, Stacey's case was cold, and it stayed that way for over 6 years. Then, in November of 2004, 2 men were out hunting in Delaware County, Ohio, when their dog suddenly ran off. One of the men chased down the dog until it finally stopped, and the dog was just sniffing at a specific spot. When the man finally caught up, he realized that the dog was sniffing at bones. At first, the hunter assumed that they were just animal bones, until he noticed a human skull, which of course is a telltale sign, not animal bones. And I can't even imagine finding something like that. Like what a horrific discovery. So he immediately reports this skull to police, and dental records later confirm that the bones did indeed belong to Stacey. Stacey's sister Danielle told NBC, quote, "A body had been found in the area. Although they thought it was older, I still got a really bad feeling when I heard it announced on the radio," end quote. She basically explains to NBC that she hears this on the radio while she's driving into work. And anytime she heard something about a body being found, she always had that pit in her stomach just waiting to find out, like, is this my sister? And that day, when she heard that on her way to work, she goes to work, she gets a phone call from police. And as soon as she heard it was the police, she just kind of thought to herself, like, oh, please don't tell me over the phone while I'm at work. But they did. And they told her that her sister's remains had been found. And she was basically just like, I broke down. I completely broke down. I don't break down at work, but I broke down. And I can't even imagine that feeling. And Danielle, do not feel bad about breaking down at work over this. I break down at work over the simplest, smallest things. So don't worry. Us girls breaking down at work got your back out there. If there's any reason to break down at work, I feel like this is it. Now, Stacey's remains were found about 40 minutes away from her apartment. And because they were discovered in Delaware County, the investigation was transferred from the Columbus police to the Delaware police. And as this is currently still an open and active investigation, Delaware County Police have not released a ton of information. But here is what we have learned since her remains were found. So Stacey wore 2 pieces of jewelry every day, and she never took them off. These were not found in her apartment or with her body. So it's possible that her killer may have taken these items. And so the items were an amethyst ring with a gold band and a gold necklace with the Delta symbol. I believe it was for her sorority. I did also read somewhere that it was the pi symbol, like PI, like math pi symbol. But to me, Delta makes more sense because she was in the sorority. So I'm not 1,000% sure either way, but I would assume that it was the Delta symbol. Now, why am I going into so much detail over this jewelry? Because these are things to look out for. Whoever did this to her is still out there. So if you live in the Columbus area or you know people who did at the time or you used to, and you're like, wait, I remember seeing this on someone's counter or whatever, think back on that and really debate with yourself if that's information that needs to be shared with the police. Because yes, it is. It is. Even if you're wrong about it, it's okay. It's better to tell them and be safe rather than sorry. Now, the only other evidence I read about that I haven't mentioned yet is one person on Reddit said that a large patch of Stacey's carpet was cut out and taken for evidence. But again, this is a person on Reddit, and I'm taking that with a grain of salt. I think that is unlikely because Danielle had described the scene as it seemed undisturbed, like nothing had really happened, like someone just was pulled out of the apartment in the middle of a meal. So I don't know how true that is, but I saw it and I don't know. I just can't not mention details when I see them. So sorry. Now, even with that, we know that the police believe that Stacey was killed in the apartment. I don't know if that's why they think that, if that's true or not, but they do say that they believe she was killed in the apartment and then her remains were taken to where they were found. There is also some online speculation that where her remains were found is not actually the original dump site and that she was moved after a few years. They think this because the land was like farming land and it had previously been something or other. And they're like, how didn't they find her when it was previously looked at? I don't know, but I don't really care because police truly believe this is not the case. They believe her remains have been there the whole time. And it sounds like the family is in agreement with that belief. So I think the whole thing about maybe they were somewhere else and then they were moved, I really think that's a little bit of a red herring. So where does the case stand today? Well, Danielle, Stacey's mother, Rana, and many of her friends are still fighting for answers. Sadly, Stacey's father passed away in 2007 with no answers about who did this to his daughter or why. And while it almost sounds like Stacey's case is completely cold and you're like, Kelsey, we can't even help, just wait, because you can help and the story is intriguing, okay? Get on board with it. So this is where it gets crazy because according to an interview that Stacey's friend Paula and Danielle did with the Murder in My Family podcast, police believe that they know exactly who did this, but they just don't have enough evidence to charge him, and it is a him. Paula explained, and this is going to be a long quote, so where the investigation is, where it has been since her remains were found, the police are absolutely certain they know who's responsible for this. He was someone that was looked at all along, but he flew under the radar of the initial investigative team. But when her remains were found, there was no more doubt. What there is a lack of evidence because, first of all, the murderer had at least 48 hours between doing what he did and when the police were alerted that he did what he did. They have been on his heels for years. They get a little bit closer just about every year, but he stays out of their reach. There's no reason to believe at this point that he has murdered anyone else, but at least one other woman has been brutally attacked by him. And so what police need is for someone who knows what happened to come forward. In my armchair sleuthing, the information I have gathered about this person is that he surrounds himself with people that feel sorry for him. He presents himself as a bird with broken wings, and so people want to shelter him. But what they're really doing is enabling him. And I think deep down they know that. I think deep down they've always known what he did and what he will continue to do if he's not stopped. End quote. Snaps, Paula. Snaps. So I just gave you a lot of information there. Let's break this down. Police know who did this, or they think they do, okay? But they don't have evidence of it. Now, I know if you're like me, your first question is this the guy that helped Stacey move that was, being standoffish to Danielle when Danielle was looking for information? I do not know for a fact that they are referring to the same man. I genuinely don't. Because both were mentioned in the same podcast, I am assuming that they are. Because if Danielle and Paula are saying, hey, the police know exactly who did this, but they're also bringing up this information about this guy, they think that information is relevant for some reason, which makes me think that it is the same man. But of course, they don't name him and they don't specify explicitly that they're talking about the same guy. But I know that's going to be a question, so I wanted to kind of explain why I don't know. Now, it's also horrific to hear that he has attacked another woman. And so what this shows us is that this is a pattern of behavior that needs to be stopped. He is not just going to change his ways and become a better person and stop on his own. This is a dangerous person that needs to be behind bars. And the police seem pretty confident that other people besides this man know what he did. And what they need is for these people to do the right thing and to come forward. I don't know what evidence they have to show that other people know, but I did read rumors online that it's possible he called someone else to help him with the cleanup and with disposing of Stacey's remains. Again, not a reliable source. This is just people gabbing online. I do not know if that's true, but whenever I ask myself questions like, why do they think other people know? I always try and find an answer. I wouldn't take that as an answer, but just something I wanted to mention on the off chance that it is true, or in case someone's heard something about someone helping someone else dump a body and whatever, and if that's the light bulb that sets it off, then great. If not, and you don't know anything about this case, probably ignore that fact because it's not from a reliable source. What I will say is, despite the fact that I don't know how they know this, it sounds extremely likely that multiple people besides the murderer know what happened and know who did this. And like I said, what the family needs now is for these people to come forward. And the family is very worried that these people might have guilt or shame about how long they've kept this to themselves. But Danielle and Paula have made it very, very clear that it is not too late to do the right thing, and that they would be grateful if someone came forward with information. So if that person is you, if you have information, it is not too late to get this off your conscience. Doing the right thing is doing the right thing. Even if you did it a little bit later than we would have liked you to, you are still doing the right thing by coming forward. Now, at the top of the show, I told you all that at the end of the story, I was going to ask you to do something to help me haunt this murderer. So here we are at the end of the story, and I'm going to tell you what I need you to do. So I've got a couple of options, depending on what you're feeling like. So Danielle has set up a GoFundMe that was originally aimed at hiring a private investigator. But she has since realized that it takes a lot more money and resources than expected to get a private investigator. So instead, they are hoping to use the money to set up billboards with huge images of Stacey's smiling face. And what they want to do is put them in strategic locations where they know that this man and the people who probably know what he did will have to see Stacey's beautiful smiling face on a regular basis, staring down at them as a haunting reminder that what they did has not been forgotten, that investigators are closing in on them and getting closer and closer each day, and that their fragile house of lies is destined to collapse. And when that day comes, I think Stacey will be smiling down from above watching. Now, if you do not have extra money to donate at this time, that is okay. You got to put your own mask on. What do they call that on the airplane? Put your own, is it just mask? Face mask? Air mask? Breathing tube? You know what I mean. Put your own on first before helping others, or whatever they tell you on the plane. Flight attendants, help me out. Help me out. But yeah, I get it. If you don't have extra money to donate, don't worry, because you can still help us haunt the person who did this, okay? This is how we're going to do it, because in 2022, Danielle and Stacey's friend Paula started an online social media campaign, which they called Finishing Stacey's Fight. Now you can follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So whichever one of those apps you got, please go follow them on all of the ones that you use. Please do. It really makes a big difference. And I'm going to tag them in the show notes and on our social media posts for this episode. I'm going to put their link tree. I'm going to put the GoFundMe link. All of the links will be linking, okay? And you're like, Kelsey, just following doesn't do much. Here's the thing. Paula told me that the man who they believe did this, they know is on social media, which makes me assume that the people who know what he did are also on social media. So what we need to do is rally together. I'm Uncle Sam. I want you, I'm pointing at you in the face. I want you to follow their pages and interact with and share their posts. Like, comment, send to your friends, share the link, whatever it may be, because the more we do that, the more they are boosted in the algorithm. Because the algorithm doesn't really like this kind of posting, okay? They want content that people can't stop consuming. They can't put their phones down. They don't want, hey, get off this app and go donate to this GoFundMe, or hey, get off this app and go tell this story to other people, whatever it may be. So it needs interaction for the algorithm to know that people want to see this stuff. So the more the algorithm shows the post to people, the more this man and the people who know him and the people who know what he did will come across these posts. And that is how you haunt somebody, okay? You give them constant fucking reminders of what they did and constant reminders of what's coming for them. Because I truly have faith that someone who knows something is going to do the right thing and they are going to come forward and that this man will be punished for what he did. And I cannot fucking wait to see the day. I can't wait for it. I'll tell you that much. So join me. And together, we will absolutely fuck up this guy's algorithm. And we will blast Stacey's story to every corner of the internet, okay? And I want to make it clear, this whole explanation of how we're going to haunt this guy, this is all in my words, okay? That's not, Paula and Danielle put it much more eloquently. I guess let me read you Paula's words because she's a little bit more purposeful with her words. But she told me, quote, "The number one thing people can do to help is interact and share our content. The person who did this is on social media, and so are people who likely know what happened that night. We are desperately trying to get our content to them in the hopes that they'll come to their senses and tell the truth. This still matters," end quote. And that fucking last sentence broke my heart because of course it still matters. Of course it still matters. This is someone's sister. This is someone's baby. Of course it still matters. And this man needs to be punished for what he did to poor Stacey. And he needs to be locked away so he can never do it again to anyone else. And so yes, I joke, like, let's all haunt this man together. Because I do want to haunt this man. Every day until he is arrested, I would like to ruin his day. Every single day. But that's obviously not the important part. The important part is that someone comes forward so we can get justice for Stacey. So if you have any information about the March 1998 disappearance and the murder of Stacey Colbert in Columbus, Ohio, you can contact the Delaware County, Ohio Detective Bureau at 740-833-2830, okay? 740-833-2830. You can also email them at dcsodetectives@co.delaware.oh.us. Also, that's a really long email. I'll put it in the show notes too. That's a really long email and hard to remember, I'm sure. But I'll put it in the show notes. You can also email Paula at finishingstacey'sfight@gmail.com. Remember, Stacey's name is spelled with an E, okay? Stacey. But yeah, I'm sure you guys are like me and you fucking hate an unsolved case. I hate to see it. And with that being said, I am so certain that this case will officially be solved one day and that this man will die in prison. And I can't wait to see it. And when they catch him, I'll be covering the whole trial. Dude, I'm from Ohio. I'll go to this trial. I will sit in the pew. If this man is caught, when this man is caught, I will go sit at his trial. Okay? I will look this man in the eyes. And I'll cover it for you guys so you know what's up, because this could be your sister. And they know what happened, and assholes just won't come forward. Which I just, it's something I'll never understand, why people do that. But thank you for listening. I hope I did all right on my own. I feel a little weird. I've just been talking to myself in a basement for like a long time now. And I feel bad because I feel like the vibes are not here without Emily. And I hope I didn't just absolutely bore you guys on my own. It feels boring right now when I'm just talking to myself. I feel like I have business to add. I don't know. Everybody send thoughts and vibes to Emily so she heals, because her ankle is not looking good, okay? It's not looking good. What was my other fucking business? I do have good news too. Sorry, some of you don't care. You can just turn it off now. The story's done, okay, if you don't care. But I do have some other news. This is not related to the pod. It's personal news. Now, after a few horrific weeks, not horrific, really, I'm just dramatic. After a few bumpy weeks of life, it's been a little bumpy. It's been a little cuckoo nutso for me. All good though. It's gonna be okay. It's totally fine. Nothing horrible. But I do have good news after a few hard weeks. I got a new nephew. New nephew born into this world. Okay, now I got 2. I'm not going to say their names on here because I feel like, I don't know if my brother and his wife want me to, but I'm now an aunt of 2 beautiful boys. So I'm hype on that. I like aunt life. I don't know why I'm telling you guys this. Okay, I'll see you next week. Huzzah! Oh, and while you guys are at it, if you are loving the podcast and you haven't done this yet, please take 30 seconds of your time and give us a 5-star rating. It helps us so, so much. And don't rate us based off this episode of me by myself, okay? It's not our best work. There are no vibes without Emily. Rate us based off of your favorite episode. Give us that 5 stars. I would love a 5-star rating. What was my other thing? Oh, yeah. If you want to request cases, please do so on our website, on the Contact Us page on our website, atrialbypodcast.com. It is in our link tree in the show notes. And that is also where you can submit listener stories. I would love to hear your listener stories. So tell us some wild shit, okay? You can do it anonymously on the Contact Us page. Just leave some crazy shit there. I would love to hear it, and I would love to read it to the world. If you don't want your name said or anything, you got to be very explicit about that, okay? I can't even talk today. But if you are not explicit, I'm going to read your name. I'm going to read everything on the page, okay? Other than that, I think we're good now. I don't know. All right. Bye. Now, if you guys love the pod, make sure you're following us wherever you're listening so you don't miss out on any future episodes.
And while you're at it, we'd be forever in your debt if you had left us a 5-star rating.
For more content from us, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Both are at A Trial by Podcast.
You can also follow us on our Facebook and join our Facebook group.
You can shop our merch by clicking the link in the show notes or visiting our website, atrialbypodcast.com.
A Trial by Podcast is a fully independent podcast. If you'd like to help support us, you can do so by donating through the link in our show notes.
The site we use for this is called Buy Me a Coffee, but don't worry, your donations will never be used for coffee or frivolous things, only for expenses related to running and growing the podcast. So thank you guys for your support.
Thank y'all. Huzzah.
Huzzah.